Hey guys, tonight we begin with something deliberately quiet, deliberately slow. Something designed to ease your mind into the gentle rhythm of centuries past. We're stepping into the stone corridors of a medieval monastery. Hours before dawn breaks across the countryside. This isn't about dramatic battles or sweeping political intrigue. This is about the soft shuffle of sandaled feet on cold stone, the whispered prayers that echo through vaulted halls, and the profound silence that wrapped itself around these holy places like a blanket. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Picture this. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, sometime in the year 1240. The world outside the monastery walls is wrapped in absolute darkness, the kind of darkness that modern people have forgotten exists. No streetlights, no glowing windows, no distant hum of machinery, just the vast, consuming blackness of a medieval night, broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl or the distant howl of a wolf echoing across the moors. Inside the stone walls of St. Benedict's Abbey, Brother Thomas stirs in his narrow cell. The straw mattress beneath him crackles softly as he shifts, and for a moment, he lies still, listening to the profound silence that fills the monastery, like water filling a vessel. The air is cold, so cold that his breath forms small clouds in the darkness. The thin woolen blanket he pulls around his shoulders does little to ward off the chill that seems to seep through the very stones themselves. This is the hour of matins, the first of the 8 canonical hours that divide the monastic day into segments of prayer, work, and contemplation. In a few minutes, the bell will ring, its bronze voice cutting through the silence like a knife through silk. But for now, there is only this perfect, crystalline quiet, this moment suspended between sleep and wakefulness, between the world of dreams and the world of devotion. Brother Thomas rises slowly, his joints protesting after hours spent on the unforgiving straw. His feet find the cold stone floor, and he winces slightly at the shock of it. There are no rugs here, no comfort for the flesh. Every sensation is designed to remind him that this earthly existence is temporary, that comfort is not the goal. The goal is purification, dedication, the slow burning away of worldly desires until only faith remains. He reaches for his habit, the heavy woolen robe that marks him as a servant of God. The fabric is rough against his skin, deliberately so. Everything in this place is deliberately austere, deliberately uncomfortable, deliberately designed to turn the mind away from physical pleasure and towards spiritual contemplation. He pulls the hood over his head, and in that simple gesture, Brother Thomas transforms from an individual into something larger, a faceless member of a community devoted to something beyond themselves. The corridor outside his cell stretches into darkness in both directions. Other doors line the walls, each one identical to his own, each one hiding a brother preparing for the same ritual he is about to perform. The stone walls rise up into shadows, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries of hands, trailing along them for guidance in the dark. The ceiling disappears somewhere above, lost in blackness that seems to press down like a weight. Brother Thomas begins to walk, his sandaled feet making the softest whisper against the stone. The sound seems enormous in the silence, each footstep echoing off the walls and returning to him like a gentle rebuke. Walk softer, the echo seems to say. Disturb nothing. Leave no trace of your passage through this sacred space. As he moves through the corridors, other figures begin to emerge from their cells. They are ghosts in brown wool, these monks, their faces hidden beneath their hoods, their movements slow and deliberate. No one speaks. The rule of St. Benedict is clear on this point. The hours before dawn are to be spent in silence, in contemplation, in preparation for the divine office that awaits them in the chapel. The corridor begins to slope downward, leading toward the heart of the monastery. Brother Thomas knows every stone of this path, every slight irregularity in the floor, every place where the walls narrow or widen. He has walked this route hundreds of times, thousands of times, in darkness and in light, in summer heat and winter cold. His feet find their way without conscious thought, guided by muscle memory and faith. The air grows colder as they descend. The thick walls of the monastery hold the night's chill like a fortress holds an army, trapping it within the stone and releasing it slowly through the hours of darkness. Brother Thomas pulls his habit closer around himself, but the cold seems to seep through the wool as if it were made of gossamer. This too is intentional. The cold keeps the body alert, keeps the mind focused on higher things rather than physical comfort. Other corridors branch off from the main passage, leading to the kitchen where Brother Francis will soon begin preparing the simple meal that will break their fast, to the scriptorium where Brother Augustine copies sacred texts with painstaking care, to the infirmary where Brother Matthew tends to the sick and the elderly. Each space has its purpose, each brother his role in the great machine of monastic life. But now, in these dark hours before dawn, all paths lead to the same destination. The chapel waits at the center of the monastery, like the heart waits at the center of the body, drawing them all toward itself with invisible threads of devotion and duty. The procession of brown-robed figures moves through the darkness like a river flowing toward the sea. Their sandals whisper against the stone in a rhythm that is almost musical, a percussion section of faith keeping time with footsteps instead of drums. No one hurries. Time moves differently here, measured not in minutes and hours, but in prayers and seasons, in the slow turning of the liturgical year that governs their lives more surely than any clock. As they walk, Brother Thomas allows his mind to settle into the familiar patterns of prayer. The words of the Psalms flow through his consciousness like water through a streambed, worn smooth by repetition, but no less meaningful for their familiarity. He has memorized hundreds of these verses, thousands of them, until they have become part of his very being, rising to his lips without conscious effort when his spirit needs their comfort or their guidance. The darkness around them is not empty. It pulses with presence, with the accumulated prayers of generations of monks who have walked these same corridors, who have risen at this same hour to perform this same sacred duty. The very stones seem to have absorbed something of their devotion, their sacrifice, their unwavering commitment to a life stripped of everything except faith. Brother Thomas thinks of the world beyond these walls, the world of merchants and soldiers, of nobles and peasants, of taverns and markets and all the noise and chaos of secular life. That world seems impossibly distant now, separated from this place not just by stone and wood, but by something deeper, something that transforms the very air they breathe into something sanctified, something set apart. The procession continues through the labyrinth of corridors, past chambers where manuscripts sleep on wooden shelves, past kitchens where embers still glow softly in great stone hearths, past workshops where tomorrow the brothers will tend gardens and copy texts and brew ale, and perform all the humble tasks that keep their community alive. But for now, there is only this movement through darkness, this pilgrimage toward the place where their voices will soon rise in ancient harmonies that have echoed through these stones for centuries. The sound of their collective breathing mingles with the soft shuffle of sandals, creating a rhythm that seems to match the beating of some great, invisible heart. Brother Thomas finds himself thinking about time, about how it moves differently in this place. Outside these walls, time is the enemy, always rushing, always demanding, always stealing moments before they can be properly lived. But here, time becomes something else entirely. It becomes a vessel for contemplation, a space to be filled with prayer rather than anxiety, with devotion rather than distraction. The corridor widens now, and Brother Thomas can sense rather than see the approach of the chapel. The air changes subtly, carrying with it the faint scent of old incense and beeswax candles, the accumulated fragrance of centuries of worship. His heart begins to quicken, not with fear, but with anticipation. This is the moment he has been preparing for since he first opened his eyes in the darkness of his cell. The procession slows as they reach the great wooden doors of the chapel. These doors are massive things, carved from oak that grew in forests already ancient when the monastery was founded. The wood is dark with age and worn smooth by countless hands that have pushed them open for countless services. Brother Thomas can feel the weight of history in these doors, the accumulated devotion of all who have passed through them. One by one, the brothers file into the chapel, their movements still slow and deliberate. The space opens around them like a cavern, vast and echoing, filled with shadows that seem to dance in the faint light of a few carefully placed candles. The ceiling soars overhead, supported by columns that rise like stone trees, their capitals carved with intricate patterns that tell stories of faith and sacrifice. Brother Thomas takes his place in the choir stalls, the wooden seat that has been his for the past 7 years. The wood is worn smooth by his body, shaped by countless hours of sitting and standing, of bowing and kneeling. Around him, his brothers settle into their own familiar places, each man knowing exactly where he belongs in this carefully orchestrated dance of worship. The silence deepens as they wait. This is not the absence of sound, but something richer, more profound. It is the silence of expectation, the silence of souls preparing to lift their voices in unison, the silence that comes before the storm of praise that will soon fill this sacred space. Brother Thomas closes his eyes and lets this silence wash over him like cool water, cleansing away the last remnants of sleep, the last whispers of worldly concern. Somewhere in the darkness above them, a single bell begins to toll. The sound rolls through the chapel like thunder, each note hanging in the air for long moments before the next one joins it. This is the signal they have been waiting for, the call that has drawn them from their warm beds into this cold sanctuary. The bell speaks in a voice that has called the faithful to prayer for generations, a voice that will continue long after all of them have returned to dust. Brother Thomas feels a familiar stirring in his chest as the bell continues its measured tolling. This is what he lives for, this moment when the community gathers to offer their voices to God, when individual prayers become something larger, something that rises beyond the stone walls and wooden beams to touch the divine. The bell falls silent, and in that silence, something new begins to grow. The abbot rises from his seat at the front of the chapel, his figure barely visible in the candlelight. He is an old man, Brother Thomas knows, though the darkness hides the lines that years of prayer and fasting have etched into his face. When he speaks, his voice carries easily through the vaulted space, trained by decades of leading these early morning services. "O God, come to my assistance," the abbot intones, his words falling into the silence like stones into still water. "O Lord, make haste to help me," the brothers respond in unison, their voices blending into a single instrument of praise. The sound rises and falls through the chapel like incense, filling every corner, every shadow, every space between the stones. Brother Thomas feels the familiar transformation beginning, the way his individual voice becomes part of something infinitely larger. This is the mystery he can never fully understand, but never stops experiencing, the way their separate prayers weave together into a tapestry of worship that seems to take on a life of its own. The Psalms begin, their ancient words flowing through the darkness like a river that has been running since the beginning of time. "Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked," they chant together, their voices rising and falling in harmonies that their predecessors perfected centuries ago. Brother Thomas knows these words by heart, has spoken them thousands of times, but tonight they feel fresh, newly minted, as if he is hearing them for the first time. The candlelight flickers across the faces of his brothers, revealing glimpses of devotion, of concentration, of men who have given their lives to something beyond themselves. Some are young, barely out of boyhood, their faces still soft with youth, but already marked by the discipline of monastic life. Others are old, their skin weathered by years of prayer and labor, their eyes bright with the accumulated wisdom of decades spent in service to God. Brother Thomas finds himself thinking about the world beyond these walls, the world that sleeps while they pray. In villages scattered across the countryside, peasants lie in their beds, exhausted from the day's labor in the fields. In castles and manor houses, nobles dream of tournaments and hunts and political intrigue. In towns and cities, merchants and craftsmen rest before another day of buying and selling, of making and trading. But here, in this sacred space, time moves to a different rhythm. Here, the concerns of the world fade away like morning mist, replaced by something eternal, something that connects them not just to God, but to every monk who has ever risen before dawn to offer his voice in praise, to every soul who has ever sought something beyond the material world. The Psalms continue, their familiar cadences washing over the assembled brothers like waves washing over a shore. Brother Thomas loses himself in the rhythm, in the rise and fall of voices, in the ancient poetry that speaks of God's mercy and justice, of human frailty and divine love. These words have sustained him through 7 years of monastic life, through moments of doubt and despair, through the long nights of the soul that every monk must face. The chapel around them seems to pulse with life, with the accumulated prayers of centuries, with the devotion of all who have gathered in this space to seek the divine. The stones themselves seem to participate in the worship, holding the sound and reflecting it back, creating harmonies and echoes that no human architect could have planned. Brother Thomas feels his breathing synchronize with the collective rhythm of the chant, his chest rising and falling in time with dozens of others around him. The cold that had seemed so sharp in his cell now feels distant, transformed by the warmth of shared purpose. His fingers, once stiff with the morning chill, have found their familiar position folded within his sleeves, and the rough wool of his habit has become as natural as his own skin. The antiphon rises from the choir, from the very stones of the chapel. To emerge a melody that seems Brother Marcus, the cantor, leads with a voice trained through years of practice, each note placed with the precision of a master craftsman, laying stones in a cathedral wall. The other voices follow, weaving together in harmonies that their ancestors in faith perfected through generations of morning prayers, each voice finding its place in the intricate tapestry of sound. As the psalm verses unfold, Brother Thomas notices how the candlelight plays across the carved capitals of the columns, illuminating scenes of biblical stories that seem to come alive in the flickering glow. Here, Daniel stands calm among the lions, their stone manes seeming to ripple in the dancing light. There, David faces Goliath with nothing but faith and a sling, his marble face serene with trust in divine providence. These images have watched over countless generations of monks, silent witnesses to the endless cycle of prayer that defines monastic life. The readings begin, and Brother Augustine steps forward to the lectern, his voice clear and measured as he recites from the Book of Psalms. His words echo through the vaulted space, each syllable carefully articulated, each phrase given the weight and reverence it deserves. Brother Thomas has heard these same readings hundreds of times, but tonight they seem to carry new meaning, as if the familiar words have been polished by repetition until they shine with fresh significance. The responsories follow, their complex melodies requiring precise timing and breath control. Brother Thomas feels his diaphragm engage as he adds his voice to the rising and falling patterns of sound. Years of training have taught him to support these long phrases, to maintain the steady flow of air that keeps the melody alive. The music seems to breathe with its own life, expanding and contracting like lungs, drawing in silence and exhaling praise. Around him, his brothers stand and sit, bow and kneel, their movements choreographed by centuries of tradition. Every gesture has meaning. Every posture speaks of reverence and submission to something greater than themselves. Brother Thomas finds comfort in this predictability, in knowing that monks in monasteries across Europe are performing these same movements, speaking these same words, participating in an unbroken chain of worship that stretches back to the earliest days of Christian monasticism. The chapel grows warmer as their collective breath mingles with the air, creating small clouds that rise toward the distant ceiling like incense. The stone walls, which had seemed so cold and forbidding in the darkness, now feel protective, sheltering this community of faith from the harsh world beyond. Brother Thomas thinks of these walls as the arms of God himself, gathering the faithful close and holding them safe while they offer their prayers. The candles burn steadily in their iron holders, their flames barely flickering in the still air. Each candle represents hours of labor, beeswax carefully gathered and shaped by Brother Jerome in his workshop behind the kitchen gardens. Nothing in this place exists without purpose, without the careful attention of human hands guided by devotion. Even the light that illuminates their prayer comes from the patient work of their own community. As the service continues, Brother Thomas becomes aware of the subtle sounds that exist beneath the chanting. The soft creak of wooden choir stools as the brothers shift their weight, the whisper of woolen habits brushing against stone, the distant drip of water somewhere in the depths of the monastery. These sounds do not disturb the prayer, but rather become part of it. Evidence of the living, breathing community that has gathered to praise God in the darkness before dawn. The lessons progress through their ancient order, each reading building upon the last, creating a narrative that speaks of God's constant presence in human history. Brother Thomas finds his mind following the familiar patterns, drawing connections between the scripture and his own experience, between the struggles of biblical figures and the challenges of monastic life. The words become a mirror in which he sees not only divine truth, but also his own spiritual journey. The air itself seems to thicken with the accumulated weight of prayer, becoming something almost tangible that presses gently against his skin. Brother Thomas has experienced this phenomenon before, this sense that the very atmosphere of the chapel becomes charged with spiritual energy during the canonical hours. He cannot explain it in words, but he feels it in his bones, in the way his heartbeat seems to align with some cosmic rhythm larger than himself. The great bell in the tower above continues its measured tolling, marking the progression of the service with bronze notes that seem to come from heaven itself. Brother Thomas knows that this same bell has called monks to prayer through wars and plagues, through seasons of abundance and years of famine, through all the countless changes that have swept across the world beyond these walls. Its voice connects him not only to his present brothers, but to all who have answered its call across the centuries. A mouse scurries along the base of the wall, its tiny claws clicking softly against the stone. Brother Thomas watches it for a moment, this small creature going about its nocturnal business while the humans conduct their elaborate ritual of worship. Even this humble mouse, he reflects, is part of God's creation, deserving of reverence and care. The monastery provides sanctuary not only for monks, but for all the creatures that find shelter within its walls. The temperature continues to drop as the night deepens, and Brother Thomas can see his breath more clearly now. Small clouds that dissipate quickly in the dry air. His feet, despite the protection of his sandals, have grown numb with cold. But he finds that this discomfort sharpens rather than dulls his concentration. Physical hardship has always been part of monastic discipline, a reminder that the flesh must be trained to serve the spirit rather than the other way around. The chanting reaches a crescendo as the brothers unite in the Gloria, their voices soaring upward in harmonies that seem to lift the very roof of the chapel. Brother Thomas feels his spirit rise with the music, carried aloft by the collective power of faith made audible. For these moments, the boundaries between earth and heaven seem to dissolve, and he experiences a foretaste of the eternal worship that awaits the faithful in the life to come. As the Gloria fades into silence, a profound stillness settles over the chapel. This is not the absence of sound, but rather the presence of something deeper, a silence pregnant with meaning and possibility. Brother Thomas closes his eyes and lets this sacred quiet wash over him, cleansing away the last remnants of worldly concern and preparing his heart for the prayers yet to come. The abbot raises his hand, and the brothers prepare for the final prayers of Matins. These concluding moments always carry special weight, as if all that has come before has been preparation for this ultimate offering of praise. Brother Thomas straightens his shoulders and opens his heart, ready to pour out his devotion in these last precious minutes before the service ends and the day's work begins. The final prayer rises like incense from their collective breath, each word carefully shaped and released into the sacred darkness. Brother Thomas feels the familiar weight of completion settling over the chapel, that sense of having fulfilled an ancient obligation that stretches back through generations of faithful monks. The silence that follows is different from what came before, richer somehow, as if the air itself has been transformed by their offering of praise. One by one, the candles begin to flicker and dim as Brother Jerome moves through the chapel with practiced steps, carefully extinguishing the flames that have illuminated their worship. The darkness returns gradually, not as an enemy, but as a familiar friend, wrapping itself around the brothers like a benediction. Brother Thomas watches the last candle surrender its light, leaving only the faint glow of embers in the iron holders to mark the boundaries between shadow and deeper shadow. The brothers begin to file out as silently as they entered, their sandaled feet whispering against the worn stone. The rhythm of their departure creates its own kind of music, a percussion of devotion that echoes softly through the vaulted space. Brother Thomas waits his turn, allowing the older monks to pass before him, their bent figures moving with the careful dignity of men who have spent decades navigating these corridors in darkness. The cold strikes him again as he steps into the corridor, sharp and immediate after the relative warmth of the chapel. His breath forms small clouds that disappear quickly into the chill air, and he pulls his hood closer around his face. The stones beneath his feet feel even colder now, if such a thing is possible, as if the night itself has deepened during their time in prayer. As Brother Thomas makes his way back through the labyrinth of corridors toward his cell, the silence feels different now, fuller somehow, charged with the echoes of their collective prayer. Soon the bell will ring again for Lauds, and after that prime, then terce, each canonical hour marking another step in the endless cycle of worship that defines their lives. The world beyond these walls will wake to its own rhythms of commerce and conflict. But here time moves to a different measure, counted not in minutes, but in devotions, not in days, but in the slow turning of liturgical seasons. And in that quiet persistence, in that faithful repetition of ancient words spoken in darkness, lies something both profoundly human and mysteriously divine.